Hey, I'm Bob and I like to make stuff. Today we're going to make a vintage marquee sign for Avengers Endgame. This video is sponsored by Avengers Endgame, which obviously is the biggest movie in the world, partially because I saw it 3 times in the theater. I'm a huge Marvel fan, and when they reached out to ask me to make something, I immediately thought of all the cool props that I could make from the movie. But they actually had a different idea. They actually challenged me to make something more personal, but inspired by the movie, and since my daughter and I both really like Iron Man, we both bonded in that moment in the movie when his daughter tells him how much she loves him. So I decided to make a sign for my daughter that says the same thing while she's out of town. So I'm going to quickly make this sign, get it mounted in her room, and surprise her when she gets back from vacation. This is going to be kind of a traditional marquee sign, but the message on the sign will be from the movie, and she'll be able to change it out later if she wants to make it say different things. We're also going to paint it up to be kind of styled around Iron Man and Captain Marvel, which is another one of her favorite characters. And we're going to make this whole thing out of really common materials. Let's do it. I got all these pieces ripped down to size, and the way this is going to work is basically 2 boxes with a solid back on the back of them. And so the inner box is going to have a piece of acrylic mounted on the inside of it, and for that piece we need to make a dado in all 4 of these. I've got the blade set up 1/4 inch and 1/4 inch from the fence. I'm using a regular blade here instead of a dado blade because the acrylic I'm using is also 1/8 of an inch. I ended up running it through the saw again, slightly moving the blade over to give it a little bit more room, and now it fits nice and tight. We've got all the wood pieces cut, and we've got the lines marked out on this back panel where we're going to drill holes and set all the pieces. So let's talk about how we're going to put this thing together. This sign's going to have 2 different light sources. On the inside of this section, we're going to line it with an LED strip, and those are going to be RGB, so we can change the color if we want to, but they'll probably just stay white. This whole center box here is going to be covered with a piece of acrylic, and then we can slide on the letters to make the sign. Around that, we're going to put in these light fixtures, and these are like outdoor bulbs with really small sockets. We're going to drill holes on each one of these marks and drop in a light, so it'll look like an old school movie theater sign. Before we put all these pieces together though, we need to paint some of them. It's just going to be easier to do it before they're in place, and to do that, we first have to seal the cut edges of the MDF. For that, we're going to use Weldbond. Now this is a glue that works really well for woodworking projects, but it's also great for sealing up edges of things like this. The reason that you do this is to seal up the grain so that the paint will be more consistent. If you've ever tried to paint MDF without doing this, you know that it's kind of blotchy, it soaks in differently in different spots. This helps make it a little bit more uniform. Next, I'm going to cut down the piece of acrylic to go on the front of the sign. I'm going to use the table saw with a normal blade for that. The big thing is that you make sure the front of the material that's touching the blade is pressed down. If you let it skip up when it hits the blade, it's going to chip out a whole lot. Also, make sure that you are wearing some sort of eye protection. All of these little things are sharp pieces of plastic that come flying at you when you're using the saw. I said you could use a regular blade, and you can, but you want to make sure that it has a lot of teeth. If it has fewer teeth, it's more likely to chip out the acrylic. So you want to use one that's made for a fine finish that has a lot of teeth. In fact, we've got a whole bits video about saw blades that you might want to check out. I got the yellow painted on these, and really all I did was put it on the outside edge that's going to be exposed on the front, and right inside this lip where the dado is. Now I'm going to glue down these pieces and slide in the acrylic to start to make the light box in the middle. So we've got 3 sides of this box on. I'm gonna go ahead and put in these lights. These are LED strips and they're kind of a warm color. And we're gonna mount these right down in here, facing up and facing down. And that should help to kind of even out the light. There will be a soft spot, kind of a darker area right in the middle, but I think it'll be all right. We can help that by putting in some white material or reflective material inside this box to bounce the light around. I forgot to plug in the lights that are going to go around the outside. They also have to be plugged in on the inside here to this extension cord, so I had to kind of do that in an awkward fashion. Make sure you think about the order of operations when you're doing stuff like this, because once you get this box closed up, you can't really get back inside of it. I wanted this last piece to be able to come off, just in case we need to get back in there for anything. And I was trying to figure out how to do that, and when I did a test fit here, I actually realized that there's enough pressure on the inside of this dado that it holds the piece in place with no glue. So we'll just leave it like that, and then we can take it off if we ever need to. Now we're ready to put on the outside frame around this, and I've got this whole piece sitting on a 1/2 inch spacer, and that's because we want a little bit of a gap behind this for the light fixtures to be able to stick through. So these pieces on the outside frame need to be glued on here, but there's a small problem. This surface is only 1/4 inch. That means all the glue surface between the outside frame and the backing board is going to be on that small edge. So I've cut some more 1/2 inch strips, and we're going to glue those right on the inside of this edge right here, both to the back of this backing and to the front and the inside of the outside frame. We got the full structure put together here, so now we need to put in the red inside this channel. To do that, we need to mask off this entire center section and all of the exposed yellow on the front face. Then we can spray down the inside of that channel and then come back and paint the outside black, and then we should be just about done. I've got the inside of that channel really well covered red. So now I want to go ahead and take off the masking to make sure that I don't leave the adhesive on there too long and it ends up pulling up the yellow paint. Once you've got your paint down, the mask really isn't doing anything, and you'll get cleaner lines if you go ahead and take it off while the paint is wet. Now we're waiting on that red paint to dry, and while we're doing that, I'm going to start working on the letters, but I also need to explain how the letters are going to be attached to the sign. Each one of the letters is going to be made by a piece of this acrylic that I've cut down on the table saw, and then the letter itself is a piece of black vinyl that's going to be stuck to it. It's really simple. I use my vinyl cutter, and we have a whole bits video on the vinyl cutter and how to use it in case you want to check it out. But each one of these letters is going to be held in place by some channels, also made out of acrylic, that are going to be glued onto this surface, and that should give us 3 lines of text if we put in enough of those pieces. Each one of the letters will bend and drop into the channel, and then we can slide them in those channels. You'll see what I mean in just a second. I've got a cutting mat down here, and it's got a grid on it. I'm going to use that grid so that I can have consistent placement for all of the letters on each one of these pieces of acrylic. So I've got this laid out. I'm going to use the bottom line as my baseline for all the text, and then I'm just going to peel off each one of these letters and apply it. Now normally, if you were trying to apply a sticker like this, you would use transfer tape as a way to apply the entire thing at once. But since I have so many letters to do, I'm going to just try to do it by hand and see how it turns out. I laid down the first one of these by hand, and it went down fine, but it's not quite placed correctly as the baseline, and I want the baseline of all the letters to be exactly the same. So I found another way to do it without using the expensive masking material. I've got one of these laid out here. I'm going to take a simple piece of blue tape and lay it down on the center of the letter and then peel it up. This is essentially the same thing that the masking material does when you're using a sticker. It's just a lot cheaper and faster. You can see just through the tape enough to line up the bottom of the letter with the line on the cutting mat. Then you lay it down flat and peel off the blue tape, and you're good to go. I've got these internal T's ready to put in, and I want to make sure that they are the same distance from the outside edge all the way across because they are a little bit flexy. So I've got the cards I cut down for the letters, covered the ends with tape so they don't get glued in place accidentally, and I've got a few of them set up. I'm going to use those as a stop to get this track put in place correctly. I'm using the medium body acrylic solvent, and that just makes it so it's not so runny, a little bit easier to handle. I don't want it getting anywhere on the acrylic except for underneath where this T is going to sit. We're getting really close to done here. The last thing really to put together is to put in the lights around the outside in this channel. Now the string lights that we got, each one of those fixtures will pop off of that string, of that wire, and then we can drop it right down in the hole and reattach the wire on the back side. I got the lights installed, and I had to add some hot glue to a few of them just to make sure they were nice and tight, and then I added a coat of black paint around the outside just to finish it off. The last thing was to add a cleat so I can mount it on the wall. This cleat is a piece of plywood with a 45-degree angle cut on it, just like this, and it's glued to the back of the sign. So it's on there nice and sturdy, and then this piece is going to get attached to the wall. Then you just drop the sign down onto the cleat, and it's locked into place. All right, let's go get this thing installed. The sign's installed and it looks great. I think my daughter's really gonna love it. But before she gets home from her trip, I wanna go set up our projector so we can watch Avengers Endgame as a family. And you can now watch it too at home because it's available on Blu-ray and digital. Let's go get that set up. Let's get into the good part. I want to go watch it, but I wanted to thank you for watching this video. If you got some ideas or learned something from this project, please let me know down in the comments. Also, if you want to make your own marquee sign, we're going to have some cheap plans available. They'll be listed down in the description. You can go check it out. Huge thanks to Avengers Endgame for sponsoring this video. Make sure you go pick it up now, digitally or on Blu-ray, so you can watch it at home. We've got tons of other project videos that you may want to check out, and if you're not subscribed, you should definitely do that. I'm going to go watch this movie. Thanks for watching. I'll see you next time. They actually, fine, but it's actually